Alright. They have PLP. Yes.
Actually, up here.
Whatever keeps you going, let us know.
It does have to be, it was there.
This is, and we made her graduate.
If I'm not mistaken, like,
It's like what's on her project.
The big room upstairs, the other time. We
Our
are
marriage.
very good for July.
Yes.
yeah,
She's,
yeah. I'm an artist, I can't afford to travel, I'm always around.
and she works for.
Okay. Well, we're talking about Tim Palin, who's a very creative artist. Are we on?
Yeah. Okay.
So we have Tim Palin tonight, who's a very creative artist, who has a very great breadth of work that he's done in videos and for publications in New York. So I was going to do this long introduction, but I'll have you do your own introduction.
Absolutely, and I'll just shut off my phone
Well,
as
okay.
peacefully as possible, but.
We have a couple things that we want to go over. We have next month's meeting, which is on the 12th. And we want to do sort of a mix and mingle volunteer thing so that we go through all of the information that we need for the big 4th of July push of the show. So we're hoping to see all of you there and many more.
Yes, mix and mingle, we did it last fall, it was fantastic, everybody loved it. And we really would love it if you could volunteer, but you don't have to be a volunteer to attend the mix and mingle. We have a ton of new members, so it's a chance to meet new people, but also a lot of people come back after several years, so you're gonna see some people you might not have seen in a while. And then for the people that have been with us consistently, yes, that is amazing.
You make our life easier.
But right now, we just did a membership push, and we have 66 members active. A lot of them filled out the member survey and the member volunteer form. But we really want to get as many as possible to be part of it, because when we talk about volunteering, many hands make light work. So we want to have everybody do just a little.
Okay. No, I think that the biggest thing is to enjoy this evening, and then we'll hope to see you next month for the Mix and Mingle. And then the push for the July show, and it's then the show at the library. So all of you get ready your artwork to submit. I'm gonna see all your pieces, and we now have a judge who's gonna go to the other show. So we're trying to helping us do.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you and enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you guys for having me. I think that if I go fast enough, we can be out of here in a quick 10, 15 minutes. Like 20 at the most. So I'm Tim Palin Creative. I am here to talk about the journey that I've been on for the past 30 years, which is a number I just realized I'm late here. I'm proud of it. I've done a lot of work, I've done a lot of a variety of that I'm really, really proud of. So with that, really what I want to do is just kind of walk through and show you what I've been doing for all these years, and also pull out some of the lessons I've learned along the way, and kind of what I picked up and how it's helped me not just in whatever I do next, but it's helped me to push me onto the next thing. So hi, I'm Tim. I grew up in Salem. As far as I know, I'm not a witch, but there's always hope. But I grew up in Peabody, Mass. I lived in many, many places. A lot of the work you're going to see here, I did while I was working in Boston as a fresh graduate from Salem State, and also 10-ish years in New York. And then since New York, I've been back in here, and now I've landed at Western App Studios, which is a dream come true, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But first, I have to introduce the motivation, the inspiration, and it's my pack. Right? This is Edith. Edith is the best dog in the whole wide world. She's given to me by the heavens and the cosmos, and she gets a million kisses every day. And I tell her she looks like a Hollywood actress every day. And it would be great if it wasn't Imogene Coca. But she does. I'll take it. Who doesn't love Imogene Coca, right? So that's Edith, and she's the best dog. This is Steve. Steve is a little bit of an emotional teenager type, and he has an obsession with socks, and he's afraid of snow, and he's a little sensitive about his underbite. So if you run into him, it's not actually. Lavinia is a bad dog. We're always in a fight. She bites my feet all day, and I think that she looks like poorly executed taxidermy. That's just me. But she sleeps right here every night, so she dreams herself every night. And then this one here that's Michael. He's a drama teacher, an actor, and an author, and a director. And we've been together for about 23 years. When you run into him, tell him I remember that number right off the bat. So one of the things that I like to point out to people before I kind of get into my work is that the stuff that I do is so varied, and I have realized that it's less disjointed as I thought it was for years. And more than that, it's just been really helpful to me. So that's part of what I've picked up over the years. So I'm going to make sure that I have some volume here. Hopefully not too much volume. This is just a little like a sizzle reel that I put on social media. I'm always on the hustle. I'm on social media, on my website. Once you start following me, you probably won't get away from this video.
Can we ask a question as you go along?
Shout them out.
What are the two little things by the side of the rock?
So a lot of my design inspiration, I've been falling into this very mid-century space. I'm also a child, so I love toys. So this is just more kind of decorative, so.
Oh, it's part of the rocket, okay.
Yeah, so it's a rocket, you'll see that, it's just kind of celestial and it's a kind of an aesthetic I've been grabbing onto lately. So here's just a little bit of what I've been doing. And again, like I said, it's a sizzle reel, so it's a little bit of a quick flash of what I do. So, I have spent years adapting, which is going to be it's kind of the overarching lesson I've learned over the years. But as you can see, it's hopefully feeling more varied than disjointed. But I do a lot of stuff. I'm a graphic designer for advertising and marketing and promotions. That's kind of where I got my start in Boston. Had a few agencies here in downtown. One was on advertising that I worked at actually doing public relations. And I left that job because they asked me to. Book design and production, this is really the bulk of my work I'm doing now. As my day job, my profession is a publishing professional, despite my hesitant leadership. But I do a lot of graphic design for book production, and I'm also, and I'll get into this later, producing books for independent publishers. I'm a children's illustrator, and that is fairly new over the past 7 or 8 years. A branding designer, I work with companies, small businesses, and it harkens back to some of the work I did as a fresh grad. Working with companies to solidify and amplify their brands. Collage artist as of late, which is a blast. I'm a web designer. Photography, I do portraiture, but also small type photography and product photography. And I'm a motion graphics video designer as well. So my art history is basically I started out by copying my brother. My brother is 6 years older than me. When I was a little teeny tiny, he would copy pictures out of Sports Illustrator. He would just, even with a ballpoint pen or a felt tip pen, he would just, on writing typing papers, copy images out of magazines and Sports Illustrator. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I just thought that if you can remake an image, he put it down after that. He really didn't pursue it, but I did, moving into, I don't know, I guess from there into maybe junior high, I just started to invent these crazy images. And I don't know, I found it very freeing. I found it very, I would do it alone. It was something I would do in peaceful moments. But you know what, I should go back. So in elementary school, I was the kid that drew. So I ended up drawing the cover of our elementary school yearbook, which is Garfield, the cat, of course, because what else is at the center of the whole Garfield? And moving from there into high school, I did a lot of I did quite a few art classes, but for the most part, they were part of the core curriculum. I didn't pursue a lot of them. I found them very intimidating. And for that same reason, moving beyond high school, while I really enjoyed it and my friends and family and all said I had a propensity for art and creating things, I had this horrible habit of, and I still do, comparing myself to others. So comparing myself to other students, senior year in high school that were going on to RISD and Nassau and Montserrat, to see myself doing what they're doing, it was just a no-go. So I just didn't even pursue it. Maybe I should have, maybe there was a scholarship somewhere, because my grades did not do a lot. But in college, it was kind of a late start for me in college to do any of the art that I had really enjoyed as a young person. I pretty much, I don't know, I feel like I put it aside until I moved into my second or third year of college where there were no classes available to me as a transfer student. And I really, really loved it. It took me into these late hours in my bedroom, sitting at my desk, drawing pictures every night. And everything I started, the night I started it, I had to finish it. And then the next morning, I made sure that my inner critic saw it first and decided whether or not it was good. And so I had this whole kind of filtering system of what was good and what wasn't. Which was, I don't know, it was a little bit of a leap from what I was doing as a younger kid drawing, where there was just pure enjoyment, beginning to end. And so I started to, when I saw that happening, I mean, I guess looking back, I saw it. I don't know if I realized it was happening then, but it could get discouraging. And then I graduated from college somehow, and I entered the professional world, which was for me in public relations. Again, not really ready to pursue the art because, credit was there. Graduated from college, I had this professional life, and I guess I realized, a few years after graduation, I put art aside completely. I just stopped. And it was about the time, I think it was about the time that I met my now husband, the fourth dog. Technically not. I'm supposed to say technically. He reminded me to kind of renew that excitement that I had. And so I started to find some ways to kind of incorporate that into my day again and to give myself a little bit of art time. So it was about that time that I was also in my first jobs, some of my early jobs after college doing graphic design. And that was a lot of fun. I ended up at let's see where I am here. I started my real graphic design kind of career at a company called AMP. It was in Boston. It was a small marketing and promotions agency. It wasn't the agency of record for companies, but it was definitely the agency that they would go to. So if Reebok wanted to do a college tour for the summer, they would hire us. And I was part of that design team. So it was amazing. All of a sudden, I went from drawing these weird creatures that I would pass or fail and ditch in my bedroom to working with these major brands with Reebok and Ben & Jerry's and Verizon, and it was a lot of fun. One of the first things I did with that company was Hawaiian Punch did a college tour. And so what it was basically, there it is. Hawaiian Punch put together this college tour where they would drive around campuses around the country and hand out posters and their new products to college students, high school students. So this was a real thrill for me. So all of a sudden, in one of my first graphic design jobs, all of a sudden I'm designing on a large scale with a brand that I grew up with, and it was fascinating. So I threw myself 100% into it. So much fun. I actually got to do a couple of vehicle wraps beyond that. But for this project, there was another component to it, and that was the poster. This is the first time I worked with other artists, art director, which I was never ready to do. I was not qualified yet. It worked out, and I worked with an agency in New York through this job, and we created this poster for the Clownin' Around tour, which was around 1950, 1996. Beyond that job, so when I was at that other agency, AMP agency, we had a lot of clients. One of them was Elle Magazine and Elle Girl Magazine, which was the TV arm of it. My company didn't realize that it was in their contract that they needed to send an agency intern to their magazine in New York 3 days a week. So I started to, I was the one that was nominated to do that. So every Monday at 5 a.m., I went into Boston, got on a train, and went to New York to work at the magazine 3 days a week. After some time, they offered me the job. And so I became a promotions art director right away at Elle Girl. A big part of my job was, I wasn't in the editorial side, I was in the promotion side, which was a nice fit from the work I've been doing. You know, those are sometimes anything from advertising to promotional pieces for special events. But really what it came down to for the most part were these editorial pages. Those ones that have this little advertisement line at the top of the page, so that you know that it's an ad, even though it's intended to look like a natural fit to the rest of the fashion magazine, into the rest of the environment. This was an amazing job. You know, right before I went to New York, I had just discovered the first season of America's Next Top Model. I was obsessed, as we all are, right? No. And then, you know, 6 months later, I found myself at this magazine, and they tell me that I'm going to start to art direct photo shoots for Elle Girl magazine. Fabulous, terrific. Janice Dickinson is the most terrifying person on the planet. If you ever run into it, she definitely yelled at me that day. She called me names, but it all ended with a weird kiss. But she was lovely. The day. But what was amazing was when I got to the magazine, they set me up for a previous photo shoot with a photographer named Josh Griffler, and he was kind of the de facto producer of these photo shoots. And eventually I moved into that role. I was designing the pages, but I was working with our photographers to produce them, hiring the hair, makeup, nails, food, everything. And so that was, you know, it was a real highlight of my career. I had so much fun. Found myself on TV a couple of times on the top model. This particular photo shoot was actually aired as one of the episodes. So we did kind of a similar situation with TJ Maxx. We went to Miami actually for this photo shoot because there was a bathing suit and summer editorial that needed to be shot in February. And the first option that was presented to us was a beach in Long Island with heaters. And I was, well, how are we going to explain the snowbanks in the background? And I don't have that time to Photoshop. So God love him, this photographer, Josh, who became a wonderful, wonderful friend of mine, my baby boy. He was able to produce this photo shoot in Miami, so we got to do that. So these marketing and ad promotions jobs were a really big deal for me because it felt like the job that got me to this place readied me for that. And that I had the experience to just, you know, to be adaptable as a designer, to embrace brands and, you know, and to bring something special to it and to bring something unique to it. My next job after Elle Girl, I should point out Elle Girl, that magazine folded, so magazines. So I was at Stuff Magazine for for a good year. It was a very interesting job for me. But again, it was fun because that adaptability that I had to take on, that I had to learn to be kind of second nature for me, came into play immediately day one. Producing photo shoots for brands, and then going back to the office and designing for a completely different brand, and really embracing their brand identity, but also making sure that that we were kind of honoring their brand with something new and fresh for these special promotions.
Quick question, if your stuff was new and fresh and it was young and the young teenagers, how did the magazine fold when it was doing good stuff?
So generally, what I gathered is that magazines usually have like a trial period of about 5 years. And there are all of these measurables that will decide whether or not it's going to happen for them. You know, the previous magazine, Elle Girl, there was a day that we had just celebrated the biggest advertising sales season that we had ever. Amazing. I say we like it's on the camera. It was a huge celebration. And then a week later, the magazine shut down because it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough, and it was too little, too late, unfortunately. So we all had to cry in the hallways that this magazine. Well, I didn't cry in the hallways. I ran to my office and shut the door and called my friend at Stuff Magazine, and had an interview the next morning and a job the next day because I just didn't have time to panic. Moving to New York with my husband, I kind of skipped over this part, was terrifying. I'm someone that needs at least some stability, and going to New York, once you get past the excitement and the possibilities of New York, for me, all I could focus on were the dangers of New York. New York can be very New York, and it's scary, and a lot of people come home with their tail between their legs. So I was on a hustle. Even in a professional environment, I always say I'm on the hustle as a freelancer, but in the professional environment, I had to really, really hustle to make sure that I was not out of work for more than a week if something like this ever happened. So Stuff Magazine, I left there because they asked me to again. It was just a bad fit, and they were shrinking, and eventually that magazine also didn't completely fold. They have an online presence, and that's what happens with a lot of magazines. They'll fold their print publication and amp up their online presence and their website. So now I'm starting to have to hustle just a bit more, and this was a side project that I did with a couple of friends. This gentleman named Palin, who just opened a graffiti museum on Miami Beach. He put together a team of my friend Josh again, and myself and this other designer, Danny Skins, to work with Vibe Magazine to do a fashion supplement to their spring fashion issue, one of their spring issues and a fall issue. We did these fashion supplements. And so it was an exercise in again, taking their brand, creating something new. This V-Style logo was new. That was not part of their original initial brand. That's not built into them as a visual, but we had to make that work, and we had to make it feel like the rest of the magazine, but clearly an editorial piece. And Vibe being Vibe was able to get a couple of big names. So Ludacris was there. I did not get to attend that photo shoot, but according to my friend Josh, it was quite a challenge, so I'm glad I missed that. And here is the fall issue of the same thing. It was gratifying for a publisher like Vibe to call us again to do another one. And so there we go. So that was a lot of fun. And the art direction that really came into it, this is when I got to start to be a little bit more artful and break out of just taking a brand, making something special out of it, that really kind of encompassed their program, their advertising program. So the art direction of these shoots and the construction of these sets to show these watches and jewelry and accessories was just a real, blast. And it was a, Saturday afternoon at Bathhouse Studios in the Village in New York. And we couldn't have been more proud of this. And it started to teach me that the work that I had been doing, I can take it further. I can do a lot more. From there, I kind of left it out because it was just a kind of a blip. I was at actually, I'll just skip ahead to this. Disney Publishing was my first real book publishing job. Primarily, like I said, I'm a book publisher, a book publishing professional. On the way into my interview that day, my mother actually reminded me that it was my childhood dream to make books for Disney someday when I was a grown-up. So that didn't help at the interview stage. Hung up on that lady real quick on the sidewalk before I went into the building. And it just was like a wonderful, magical fit. We had a great interview. My boss, who became a really good friend of mine, and I got to immediately jump in to working with Mickey and Bambi. It was just a blast, and it was truly a dream realized. Within that job, I did a few things. I worked for Disney Publishing, which is more of the classic properties, but also some of the more pop properties, like the Disney Channel, the franchises, Camp Rock, and some of the movie properties. So this was a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun to design the covers. We got to work with Miley Cyrus before she was 96. The other component of my job there was working for Disney. So that was with Disney Press. My job was twofold. I worked with Disney editions as well. And this arm of the publisher is more of I would say it's a Disney purist, and it's all ages, but really it's for those adults who are fans of Disney. So we got to really make some amazing special books. So one of my editor that I worked primarily with, she had a book get canceled off of the list. So we had to come up with something quick to move into the next sales season. And so she had realized that there were so many princesses being celebrated in the Disney universe. Princes were getting, you know how it is when men don't get their due. So we put this book together, which was fascinating to do because she was really onto something. She wanted something that was tongue in cheek for the women and the men who love princes to indulge and have this beautiful book. But it became an art book, which is one of the categories of these books. Was beyond like the behind the scenes and all that. The real focus was on the art and the art development. So what that meant for me was going into the archives and researching art in Florida, in California, which is insane. So that was a magical moment. This was a magical moment, working on this Tinkerbell book, which actually never saw the light of day. Actually, you know what? Neither did that. Yeah, the cruel mistress that is publishing will sometimes shut you down when you're done with the book. But one of the real amazing moments of the job was actually very much towards the end of my tenure there. There was a division called Hyperion, who was a little bit more of like the teen books, the tween, romance novels and some of the adventure novels. Peter and the Starcatchers was one of the big notable books. They also handled some of these more classic Disney pieces. So this series began, I believe it began with another title. This was, I think, the second title of the series. And the team was just too overwhelmed, so they had me jump in. And it was basically a retelling of Peter Pan, the Disney version of Peter Pan, using Mary Blair's concept art for the animated feature. So basically, the book was made out of her storyboard art, which filled me with fear, because all of a sudden I'm responsible for making this book with eyes on me that really honored her art, but also brought it to another place that was like, just a little bit different than another picture book. So some of this art that kind of is extracted out of the final pieces, while that was a lot of fun to do, it was also, I felt like Mary Blair was watching over me, like, be careful, because it's, you have this idol, this art legend, and now you're gonna go and take apart her art. But they were happy with it, it worked, this one was published. And so that was fabulous, and it was one of the lessons I picked up from that was just to start to not be afraid. I think that job, in particular, this Disney job, maybe because it was a dream realized. Yeah.
And this one made it,
What's that?
and this one made it.
Yeah, this one made it. Who's gonna cancel Mary Blair, right? And who's still, and I love mine. Recently, or a few years ago, there was at the Art Comm Museum, there was a Mary Blair exhibit. And I had gone just late enough in the afternoon that I was the only one in the room, so no one could see me cry. It was awesome. I adored my job at Disney Publishing. In fact, one of the greatest things that I got to do, and I'll pass these books around after we're done. One of my mentors at the company was somebody that had been with Disney for many, many, many years. He was out in California. He was such a hippie and such an inspiration. He was so good. Ken Shu was his name. And he had this idea to create a book called a Disney sketchbook. And what he envisioned was a sketchbook that had been passed around from generation to generation among Disney artists. So his plan was for it to look like it had been passed around and then other artists were inspired by something on a page. So there may be pages where there is Lady and the Tramp, but also Bolt, because the Lady and the Tramp art inspired the decades later Bolt artist on that page. So really, it's basically a wordless book, which is intended to feel, it's a little cleaner than a real sketchbook because the publisher also has to honor the bookseller's wishes. But it was just, another dream come true. I went to Disney campus in California, and they put the white gloves on me.
Oh.
The first thing they did was hand me a piece of glass with leaves painted on it. And I had just seen Bambi for the first time just before that. As an adult, I hadn't seen Bambi yet. And then they handed me this glass, and I was like, oh, glass. And it was one of the original background scenes from the multi-plane camera that Disney had kind of revolutionized, where it would pan, would be this parallax pan in different layers. So, oh God, I'm such a baby. So I had to hand that back quickly because I started to tear up. But then I got to spend a week in the archives with white gloves, just looking through art with my boss's guidance to try to find as much art that had never been published before to put in that book. That one was published. Then I got laid off from that job. Disney Publishing, their consumer products at that point, they were trying some new things, so they kind of cut a lot of their departments in half, and I was one of the ones that got cut. So I ended up at this small company called Playback. It's a French company. If anybody has heard of them, they may have heard of them because they publish a daily newspaper for children in Paris, what they did at the time. So it was like, it was fun. It was a lot of fun until I got laid off. Apparently, that's what happens when you move to New York. You just keep getting laid off. There you go. So that was this big scary moment, right? So I can't get laid off anymore. I can't keep calling my mother to tell her I don't have a job again. So I decided that it was time to go off on my own, which was, again, terrifying because I'm someone that needs that stability. I needed insurance, I needed a paycheck every Thursday, no matter what, direct deposited. And then all of a sudden, I'm gonna go off and do this thing, which is a real risk. Sort of a risk. I had a client that was a new, fresh client that was taking up all my time, so I felt confident in doing that. My husband also, his teaching job in New York, he decided about that same time that he was gonna quit that job and also be a freelancer. Yeah. Right, that was fun. So that's when I learned you can pay for health insurance out of your own pocket. So I started to move into being this Tim Palin creative kind of entity, to be a freelancer, to pick up what I could, and just be, again, on the hustle. And it became the situation where at a previous job, I had gotten to know a children's art agent, and her mother was a book producer, which, has anybody worked with familiar with book packagers or book producers? They're basically like a subcontractor. So a publisher will hire somebody, a book producer, to make a book, and it's on that book producer to build the team. Basically, they farm out a book, and then we put their logo on it and hand it back to them. Make all the money. Fantastic. This job was, this new client was amazing for me because I got to really start to really see myself in publishing outside of, you know, the safe kind of bubble of Disney, because now I had to kind of be inventive with my clients. So these books were just a few of the books. I think I did about 25 books with this one particular manager over the years. There were times when I was working on these big coffee table books, 7 or 8 of them at a time, which I don't recommend. But she was a really successful packager. Her name was Nancy, and she worked with quite a few publishers, so she was able to develop categories in her business. So there are a few of the fashion and beauty books that we did together. We did a lot of cookbooks. I had to learn, you know, as a designer, I never really thought I would have to be like really keen on measurements and conversions and all of that, but it became a big part of my job to watch out for that while I was laying out the book. Typically, I don't read a book while I'm laying it out. Don't tell any of my clients, please. But you know, I probably did like 10 or 15 of those books with that particular packager. And recently, I say recently, it's been for the past 10 years or so that I've been doing books with Scholastic as well. Primarily kits for kids, for the school book clubs, and sometimes for the other divisions. And those are a lot of fun because I'll do a Bigfoot tracker kit, and then halfway through that, they'll ask me to switch gears and do some, you know, a rock collecting kit or ghost slime, which we're all familiar with. So this is just more of the book production I've been doing over the years, the book designing I've been doing over the years. These are just some of the brands. I'm working with Disney again through Little B Books because they're a licensed publisher of some of these bigger brands. So WWE Wrestling, Disney, quite a few other, JoJo Siwa. I designed a JoJo Siwa joke book. Who knew that was a thing? This is Octane Press. They're out of Texas, as you could probably surmise. This is one of the times that I realized that it was really important for me to, you know, put design a little bit second and really embrace what they do first. So Lee Clancher is the publisher of this independent. He's the head of this independent publisher. And he has a real affinity for hot rods, tractors, and generally just farm life. All of a sudden, I went from Alexander McQueen detractors as we do. Meanwhile, doing the ghost line thing on the side. And the thing about that is I learned about this time, I was like, God, I can't believe how much I'm still using from my first jobs out of school. When I was at Amp Agency and I had to design for Simon Malls and Reebok on the same day, I realized that that job had set me up for a lot to come. I never could have seen this coming, working in book publishing at all, but creating books, in all these different genres all at once. I'm working with another publisher who's a kind of a contracted art director. It's an independent publisher that just started. And they're creating books to remind the world that it can be kind. And these are really special books on celebrating family, children, a variety of cultures. The publishers are people out of Minneapolis, so they're the nicest people you've ever met. Moving into the end of the book publishing, recently I've had some real highlights. And it's a time that I realized that all of that hard work, all of those insane midnight oil nights that I've had designing books would lead me to some really, really special things. Ty Hunter, if you're not familiar with him, he is a fashion stylist. He was working in a clothes store in Texas 100 years ago. And a woman came in and said, my daughter is in a girl group called Destiny's Child. Would you help us with costumes? So he was their stylist for Destiny's Child. And then when Beyonce went out on her own, he became her personal stylist for years and best family friend. And so speaking of the Met Gala, this was one of the outfits from the Met Gala, which was actually after Ty stopped working with her. When it was kind of a big buzz that he was back on, was he still working with her? But he hadn't been. Now he was with Billy Porter as his personal stylist. And I realized at that time that I grew enough as a designer that I could be called for a book like this. I didn't chase this book. Publisher was really sweet and generous and wonderful and asked me if I wanted to be a part of it because we are on a board together. So he was familiar with my work and grabbed me for this book. And it was a blast. And I realized that maybe because of the years in New York, that I just didn't have to be intimidated by the people, the celebrities, that I could just enjoy making a book. And Ty Hunter is the nicest person in the world, even nicer than the people in Minneapolis that I just mentioned. And another very recent highlight is this Lucille Ball book that I did with that same subcontracted publisher for Writing Press. Amy Poehler did the foreword, and I was called on to design the book, soup to nuts. Everything in the book I designed, and additionally, halfway through the book, we realized that some of this collage work that I was doing, just these color blocking, turned into actual collages for chapter openers and special features in the book. So I became an illustrator for this type of book, which, and I'll get to, by then I had been doing some children's illustration, and it kind of woke me up to the fact that, this illustration style is collage, it's digital, I do a little bit of drawing, and it's also something that breaks out of the kids market, which I had been working in for a bit now. I'm also a book producer myself. My previous literary agent, Bright Agency, an illustration agent, Bright Agency, they kind of have this policy that if somebody comes to them as a self-publisher and they want to hire an artist with them, that's great, but they want to know where the art's going. So they kind of contractually make sure that that independent self-publisher is using one of a couple of designers on one of them. So I had this amazing experience producing this book with a woman whose husband wrote this story 35 years ago for his kids. And it was about it was environmental awareness story all those years ago, which is so relevant right now. So this beautiful story, this is one of the first projects as a book producer that I didn't just design the book with them. I actually hired and managed the artist as well, which is a totally fun process. I'm a shopper by nature. I love to shop, so that first part of this project was to just shop for an artist with this agency. And I realized again, another little thing that I picked up was that I could have the confidence in, putting my 2 cents in and saying, look, I know you really love this artist. He's not available. This artist looks like, that her art looks like his. She's not available, but I think you're not really hitting the vibe of this story and the sweetness of this story. It was flashy art. It was almost Disney art, which it loves, myself included. But I wanted something that was a little bit more organic and a little bit more kind of an indie art feel, almost even European in the art style. So while they were shopping for artists in a very specific, narrow space, I brought them this artist. Begged them to trust me. And they did. They were so happy with this artist. I think that what they were kind of hung up on was they could see this kind of simple shapes artist, but they didn't know how they were going to get. They had one gag in mind where they wanted to see this whale at his graduation, and they couldn't imagine that happening. So to sketch with the artist and work with the artist, it's one of my favorite images that I've art directed over the years because it was unexpected. We didn't think we could do it, and we did it. And the artist El Primo, he nailed it, and it was killer. So I've been continuing to produce books, which also means working printer, and it's a satisfying experience because it's also taking independent self-publishers that are not sure what they're doing yet, and they shouldn't. Nobody does when they're going to publish their own book the first time, and so it's just a really special moment to realize that, oh my gosh, I know enough now to teach you how to do this and to guide you through this and be like a little bit of a mentor through this. Moving into the illustration space, by this time when I book producing, I had jumped into illustration, and I'm only going to touch on this a tiny bit here because it's a whole evening unto itself. But one of the big joys was getting my first Big 5 publisher project. So this was Penguin Random House. They hired me to create a baby board book to teach the fundamentals of chess, which I still don't know. And you'll see at the end, one of the things that I have finally learned is to trust myself and know that, like, I'm good enough to do this stuff. Like, there's stuff that I can do that I saw other people do, but I can do it too. And this is one of those. It was a really incredible experience. And they were really happy with the book. Beyond that, I work with other publishers. This is actually a book that, while it's presented as a physical book, it was actually a digital book online. It was searched by folks for a while. But my own illustration, my own kind of self-guided journey through illustration, it's been a little bit challenging because you immerse yourself in this world. I learned this whole environment and this whole universe of children's publishing. I love kid-led art. Everybody in it is supportive of each other. It's wonderful. But the problem that I had was I was still a little bit not confident enough in my own art, maybe because of those years that I had put it aside, that I started to look to other artist styles as something I wanted to do. And, I was like, well, John Klassen, his art is deceptively streamlined. informed, and it's incredibly difficult to achieve, and he's a genius, but I thought I could do that. I like those shapes, I like that style, and then a month later, I see something else, and I think I can try that. And it really put me in this position where I was trying things and it wasn't working out, or it was working out just enough to get me a small project. And then what I realized is that my portfolio is just a mess. It looked like 10 different artists. So what I'm starting to do now is streamline that and move forward. This is kind of the general vibe, because every time I moved away from something, trying something new, sitting on the couch having fun, this is what came out of it when I was relaxed. When I was relaxed as an artist, when I was relaxed as an illustrator, just playing. And what I had to get out of my head was, when I created this, I loved it, but I immediately started to reimagine it in other styles, because I didn't think that this was the style for me, even though it came so naturally. But it felt, maybe it was more mass market, maybe it was more, maybe it wasn't this niche, independent publisher experience that I was after, when really, first of all, I'm a working artist, I need to work. But also, this is what comes naturally, and it has been well received. So my previous agent actually had me showcase all the different things that I've done. When I left that agency, because I wanted to start writing my books as well. And that agent wasn't able to accommodate. So I left that agency on great terms. He's a good buddy of mine, and now I'm pursuing another agent. And he couldn't believe, this new agent couldn't believe how many different styles I was trying. And he was like, you've got to bring it together, but you have to do it in a way that makes you feel good about what you're doing. Stop trying to do things. Stop trying to make other people work. Do what feels right for you. And for me, in the background, this is what feels good to me. That's what feels good to me. That's what feels good to me, this style. But I kept moving away from it because I thought it was a grocery store book style, which is a huge part of the publishing industry. Why wouldn't I embrace that? But then there's that this kind of compulsion for children's artists to want to stay in a space that is, independent and unique and quirky. So I decided that this is one of my favorite pieces. I've redrawn this. Splat is right. So I'm hoping that when I pursue this style and keep this in my portfolio, people will appreciate the Looney Tunes-ness of it, and that it's just a violent image, a different planet.
That looks like a good T-shirt.
It could be a very good T-shirt. It'll be on my website tonight. Thanks. But what that all is to say, and I can be wordy, and I apologize, but what that's all to say is that I didn't trust myself to do what I wanted and to do what felt right. And now I have this potential agent who has given me the homework to redraw half of what I've ever done, to streamline it and do what feels right, and that's what feels right. So a lot of my work, as people at Western Ave can attest, I'm constantly moving things around, and I'm redrawing things, and I have a whole lot of homework right now to redraw. One of the other things I'm doing right now is video and motion graphics, and that has been a real learning moment for me because, first of all, I love it. I'm self-taught in almost all of this stuff. I'm pretty much self-taught. YouTube taught me. So if I jump into my video editing software and I'm going to try to do something, YouTube will help me out quick. So I built this small arsenal of video work that has become valuable to my career because I can add on. So when I'm working with a publisher and I've designed a book for them, I can start to plant the seed halfway through, like, oh, by the way, when this is published, I can help you promote it with a book trailer. This is one of them. And so what is happening here when I'm designing this video is that I've taken their book art. The book is obviously kind of a chunky book with three-dimensional pieces that pop out and you puzzle them together. So to capture that and to show the real play moment of the set in videos, I don't know, it's just so much fun, which is another thing I picked up, is that if I'm not having fun, well, here's what I created as a book trailer. Every page is different. There's sort of a template to the book, but really there are gears, there's monocles, there's pearls, there's all kinds of things that are layered over this book, which made it amazingly fun to take that and put it in motion. And then find similar pieces. I use obviously still images for these gears and things, but then when it came time to make this, to go to some of my resources and find these little gears to kind of rework into that was fabulous. I'm a website designer. I get to bring a little bit of design to those. What I'm doing now is a lot more collage, of which I am so in love with, because it's assembly based. So like I was saying about that trailer, to build that book, it was very much assembled, more than designed. And so this is how I feel about this collage book. There's a author publishing with her collage work, but also some all ages editorial. I try not to say adult books because it's strips of paper, which I control again. I'm moving into physical collage, but I'm not quite ready yet. But I realized that I made my own space for myself to have fun by taking images and manipulating them into something else. So this was for a challenge at Western Lab just this past weekend. So I started it last Tuesday because I'm a planner. And what I had done was, and I don't think I included them in this because I'm a planner, the theme was teacups. Art. I grew up with the son of a crafter. Can you believe it? I wasn't the son with the sports obsession, I was the crafter. So, these Macaulay style patterns, in fact, we started looking, I did, and it was such a fun day. It was crazy to see everybody's interpretations of teacups. And to my shock, there were actual teacups that were some of the most beautiful I've ever seen. So putting these pieces together, and then of course I broke out of it. There aren't 8 tentacles, there are more. It doesn't have to be an octopus. It's a big mutant lady. We don't know what her head is. She might have a camel head. I don't know. But my next move with this is to take it and animate it. So I have already started that. This is the beginning of a project that I started it 10 minutes after I found out that Sinead O'Connor passed. I've been a huge fan, super fan ever since Black Color. And what was surprisingly being presented to people was, that thing that she did all those years ago was so horrible, but actually she was a little bit of a warning signal for us. So what I wanted to do was celebrate her fierceness, her awareness, and her caring heart too, because while people think of her as just like this cranky, bald, loud lady, she's also one of the most sensitive artists that I've really learned about, and just such a sweet soul. So I wanted to make sure that she looked in this piece as a caretaker and a guide for people. And this is going to be the beginning of a series I have in mind called Queens and Goddesses, where I'm crowning notable women. So the story, obviously, that I wanted to tell was that she was telling us all what was happening here and here in a way that was pretty and chaotic. And this is where eventually I landed. And so I gave her that voice. I gave her the crown. I gave her the position to be in front of this child, protecting the child. And then I have this ominous force overlooking all of it behind her back. And it's hard to think about, but it's, I think it's a good beginning to the series to celebrate women that, for all reasons, are should be crowned. This, I have a tendency to rush things. This is what I did the first day. And like I did when I was in high school, once I started something, I had to finish it immediately. So I'm not sure why the Statue of Liberty came into it. I love this contouring that I added to her body, but it doesn't say anything about this moment that I wanted to share. And then the rest of it was just feeling a little bit like an advertisement for a stock agency. So that's why I wanted to dig a little bit deeper and layer it more and really tell it. I think that was the message that I needed. And that's why the first one was bugging me. And this is the first time I'm showing it. Some of my other collage work has been, again, assembly-based, but also trying to think of these kind of surreal moments. It was all a dream. In the back of my mind a little bit when this started to come together, I actually didn't have a plan for this. Most of these I don't have a plan for. I just like to play with the images and see what feels right. This started to feel right. These planets represented by disco balls harken back to my younger days when I stayed up too late. And I thought I was in the middle of like this amazing moment, and it was all a dream, and it was all fake. And so I feel really, really close to this, aside from the fact that it was just fun to do. This piece is actually hanging in the Merrimack Rec for this year. A big black and white photo. She was a local performer, radio star, and I wanted to kind of flower it up and bring new life to it because this image was her advertising. Frida is another part of this new endeavor. This crown is actually stock photography of a bathroom mirror. We already have crowned Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but I wanted to do it again.
Never do it too much.
No,
Yeah.
yes.
And of course, Sinead's the kickoff. So the lessons I've learned are definitely to come from a place of yes. Told me the story that she and her boss, when he was very young, he said to her boss, "You told them we can make a website for them." And he said, "Yes." And she said, "We don't know how to make a website." I was like, "You better figure it out." And it became a core of their business because she eventually got on board and came from a place of yes. Pardon, please. Have confidence in what you create. I'm still dealing with this. I think everybody does. I think we all have a little bit of an inner critic, but more and more, I'm gaining the confidence to show it. And it wasn't until this past year that I don't cringe when someone calls me an artist because I think it's okay. It's okay to say you're an artist. I just never thought I had earned that title. From a workflow standpoint, and from what I take on, I tend to take on too much. So I always have to remind myself to be good to yourself, try not to do too much at once. The really best work you can do is not going to come out of this moment of suffocation when you're married and all you can think about is a deadline. It's not helping. And to do your own thing, which is, again, what I learned from the illustration process and figuring out who I am as an artist in a number of different ways. I mean, it's all different styles and different things, but really when you come into the categories, I feel like I found my place. And so that's, and eat chicken wings. The best chicken wings are at the Keep, but Tremonti is a close second in downtown. One of the last big lessons from my mother was when I was a kid, we weren't allowed to just sit and watch TV. In fact, when I heard her car pull in the driveway, I would panic and grab something, pretend she'd come in and I'd have the phone book upside down. But, you know, and that was the chorus in the house was, don't just sit and watch TV. Don't just sit and watch TV. It's not that there was too much to do, it's just that it was, my mother saw her as a brain killer, and she's just like I am. I'm just like she is, obviously, that she is she's a creator and she doesn't stop. She is not very mobile now, but she still doesn't stop. She doesn't stop dialing my number. She doesn't stop. She's always doing something, she's always planning, she's always plotting, and I think that that's important to keep just things fresh and awake, and to keep yourself awake to make stuff, which I'm not sure how I did this. My tagline that I plaster everywhere is make stuff. And that's really what it comes down to, because I make stuff every day, whether I keep it or not, that's to decide later. And say hi. Feel free to say.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Yeah.
I was afraid I was gonna run too short, I'm so sorry.
Can you pass around books, please?
Oh, absolutely. So, thank you. And this is the Disney sketchbook. And then the two more recent books.
So what sort of software are you using for all this stuff?
So a lot of the drawing illustration, I do light version of Photoshop. It's just a version of Photoshop that's focused on creating art.
Do you use any, like, you do like a,
Yeah.
Procreate or something?
So I love Procreate, I went away from it, and then recently I was like, why am I not making amazing art on this $7 application? That, I don't know, I don't know if I thought it was cheating, or I don't know if I thought that I had to use the professional stuff that everybody else is, and then I realized everybody else is using it. And full books are being illustrated on this $7 application, which is so cute, I want control, you know, I'm not reaching across the big screen.
Yeah.
I used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you talked about book trailers, and that's what I saw on your website and thought was so cool.
The steampunk one, I made for myself. I made for that 10 years. I made that a few months ago. That book was published 10 years ago. I just made it for myself to see the possibilities of doing that, and to also show publishers that, like, this is a really cool way to show your books. And while I do honor myself and honor my talents and craft, I am sometimes cheap labor, and so I can do these for you because I found some real efficient ways and some tools to turnkey.
Yeah, that should be at the Steampunk Festival in Worcester.
I just heard about that. It shows you how close to my content I am.
When is that?
Oh, gosh, I can't remember, because when I saw it, it was over shutdown, so they were moving dates and stuff. But it might, no, I will let you know. I will find it and I will let you know. But James Patterson's new book, and it commercials about a book, and I hadn't been seeing them before,
Yeah.
so that's where I was wondering, 'cause your stuff, I mean, granted, James Patterson, you're not creating something like a little kid's book, but I just thought, that's amazing, that would get me into the book.
Well, that was part of it too, is that's one of the reasons I made the steampunk one, because the book trailers that I'm familiar with are for children's books. They're kids' books, they're poppy and cute, and there's a lot of ukulele music, so you're gonna want to love. I love the fashion books, they're really niche, high-end books. And so that's what I want to do, and start making sure that clients know that I can do that. In fact, for some of my contracts for publishers, just throw in as a bonus. At the end, you know, promotional images of their book, pictures of my dogs, and a 10-second trailer, teaser, which I'm hoping will lead them to come back and say, we need more of these. Because they're useful tools, and I think that they really catch people's attention. And they've gone through a lot of changes. You know, there was a time when it was mostly like a few pages turning, a little bit of animation and text on a page, but I think they're getting a lot more playful.
So this series that you've got going here, is that Photoshop work or is that?
Photoshop.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty much all assembly. On this one, it's kind of hard to see here, but this image actually was painted a lot more flat than the original. I use primarily public domain images or more contemporary resources that are also in the public domain, but this is a very glossy photographic image of water splashes.
Question,
Computer generated, but for this, I overlaid my own shading and highlights.
technical question, approximately how many layers do you wind up with? 10, 20, 30?
I don't know, it shut down all the lights in my studio. Like it's short circuit. It's crazy. No, it's a great question because what I do when I'm working is if I like something, I use layers, I add masks and things so I can adjust them later. But I was too lazy when I was younger to learn the real proper fundamentals of Photoshop. So I would just like cut things out and use them. So I have this kind of nasty habit of making a little change, duping that layer, hiding that, and moving on. So the other day when I went to go back to start to animate it, it took me a couple of hours just to isolate layers that I needed, what could be married together. So I would say for that piece, I probably ended up with 100 or so layers.
Okay, but technical point, each layer is what, 40, 50 megabytes?
It depends on what's landing on there, but that was definitely a couple of gigabytes file. You know what it was, is I made it for this size, and halfway through the project, I don't know, I hit save just at one particular point where it warned me that it can no longer save it as a Photoshop file and that it needs to be a Photoshop large format. Wow.
You put memory banks
Oh,
there.
no.
How many hard drives?
Do
how many
this.
hard drives there?
How many hard drives are you working with?
What's that?
How many hard drive are you working with?
Just that desktop, which luckily, you know, I used to back up my stuff on either like constantly backing up a drive or, you know, every week I would manually back it up. And I was like a serial backup. Like I couldn't, I was too afraid. So if I go to find something, there are some things that are on 5 different drives and there are some things that are on this. But I have a drawer full of them. Now I work entirely on Dropbox. So everything I work on is locally saved to my machine, but then also syncing as it goes along. So then, you know, I finally got to a point where everything I'm working on, I can see on my phone. I may not be able to work on it, but I can see it on my phone. Which gives me some comfort until somebody has Dropbox.
It's amazing the correlation between songs and music videos, and the correlation between books and videos to advertise the books. The correlation of the two genres coming together.
And that's what I love about these trailers, is because, you know, as insanely gorgeous as some of these books can be, now all of a sudden there's this like new layer, like I can animate it, because I won't just like move elements, I will actually take a character and animate the actual character, and, you know, and articulate arms and legs and try to do things there. Yeah, it's fascinating. Not what I did, it's fascinating to see it happen, I'm just trying to catch up.
Thank you.
Great questions. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I know, it was like a rambling, it was the longest resume ever, but but the real message, when I was putting this together, it shape-shifted a few times, just like the work does, is that everything that I've worked on since I got out of college, like I said earlier, has not just prepared me for the next thing, but kind of propelled me, and I'm using all of it. Like I think about the fundamentals of the stuff I learned at AMP Agency, even when I'm doing things like that. You know, to kind of, it helps me focus a look and feel. So, thank you for indulging.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm on my way to see the next cosplay, so, no.